All right. Okay, let's kick off then. Well, so thanks for everyone who is attending today, particularly on such short notice. Usually want to leave, at least a week before kind of organising a webinar, but we only had a couple of days, and based on the ruckus on our blog. There's just a stack of comments. I think we're like over 600 or 700 comments there on the blog post. And there's obviously a lot of concern, a lot of confusion about what is currently going on in SEO at the moment. It just seems like every month Google unleashes something new, and if you're using SEO in any part of your traffic generating strategy for your website, then that's really confusing. It can be really it's really difficult to work out what's working, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of opinions out there, and they're often conflicting. And I mean, even the basis of this webinar, I said a couple of things, which a lot of it was based on some of my opinions about I think how Google are going to use that information. And just as a bit of a background, I actually did work as a search engineer for a number of years, actually. Back with Ed Dale. We actually worked together on building one of the first search engines out there. So I've got a little bit of knowledge on search engine algorithms, how they get implemented, and all that kind of stuff. I know Leslie himself knows a thing about those things as well. So again, no one really knows exactly what's going to happen. But if you've been following the SEO industry for any length of time, what you do know is that you can, if you see enough stuff happening, you can start connecting the dots, and a lot of, I'm sure what Leslie will share today, and a lot of what I talked about in the blog post is trying to actually connect the dots and try to see where is Google going with this sort of stuff, and how do we stay ahead of Google in terms of making sure that what we're doing is still going to be effective. And as of this year, when everything's kind of turned upside down with stuff like Penguin and Panda not that long ago, to make sure that at least what we're doing is not going to hurt our efforts. And I think that's the big mindset shift that certainly has been going on recently. Is that in the old days it used to be you could do a bunch of good stuff, and even if stuff was a bit borderline out there and maybe wasn't the highest quality or necessarily the best thing to do, at least Google wouldn't necessarily penalize you. Well, that's what the most people believe anyway. But with some of the recent algorithm changes, a lot of that has kind of turned 180 degrees. So there's so thank you for all those that turn up today. I'm just going to give a bit of a brief intro. I like to say that the man requires no introduction, because he really is, and a lot of people refer to Leslie as the godfather of SEO. Now, I've been doing internet marketing quite a few years. I started when I was 17, and I'm just turned 37 a couple of weeks ago. So I've been kind of doing this thing for a bit, almost coming on to 20 years now. But back in the day when SEO was kind of developing and started to get a little bit more sophisticated as some of these algorithms were coming out, there was a bunch of real innovators out there in the industry, and Leslie was one of them. He released some really great software out there, which I was one of the first customers of, called OptiLink, and published a lot of really groundbreaking techniques out there in SEO, stuff like the idea of dynamic linking, which really led to the whole PageRank sculpting techniques that a lot of people have been using. Certainly, at Noble Samurai, obviously, we produce a lot of SEO products, and what most people don't know is that every single person that comes on and joins our company, the first thing that we do, obviously after we give them keys to the building and passwords and that kind of stuff, is say, hey, sit down and read this book, and this free book called SEO Fast Start, and it's produced by Dan Thies, which is Leslie's partner in crime at the SEO Brain Trust, and it really spells out SEO kind of end to end. And even though it's probably what I would kind of consider sort of basic to intermediate stuff, which is why we give it to people starting out, like just reading that would put you ahead of like 90-95% of people out there in the industry. So yeah, so if you haven't read it, I really think you should. So and one of the things about Leslie is that he calls himself the SEO innovator for very good reason. Is he's always kind of on the cutting edge of what's going in SEO. I remember I was in a seminar in London. I was hearing him present around some of the strategies which I think I alluded to in the blog post around using social media and how the whole link building thing has kind of changed. It's kind of gone up, it's been turned completely upside down because I think to quote Leslie, the average teenager on Facebook is building more links per day than than a webmaster would in a year. So everything has kind of changed. And so that being said, I think I will hand over to Leslie, and maybe we can sort of get some sense about the craziness which is currently going on in the search engines. So I'm going to just change the presenter over to Leslie. If we have that technology, change presenter.
Did you already show screen?
I am showing. So I showed the. Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep. All right. You are now in control. I know you like that.
Let's see if I can actually get it to show a screen because of the nature of tool. Oh, are you kidding me? Yep. Low. Where's Keynote? Are you still hearing me? Eugene, talk to me. Hello?
Yep.
Are you still
yes.
there?
Yep.
Okay.
No,
All
you're
right,
coming
okay.
through loud and clear.
Because it went all silent on me, and I hate it when that happens. Okay. let me get this fixed. Hang on a second. This is not. Usually I do this in other order. All right. Okay, now I think we're good. Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, it's fortunately SEO is easier than GoToWebinar and Keynote. All right. Well, thanks a lot for the introduction, Eugene. I really appreciate it. And again, I mean, we've known each other for quite some years, and so we're having a little bit of fun with the whole SmackDown thing. Obviously, there actually will be no bloodletting going on in this webinar, but it was just kind of fun. So pardon the little bit of humor there. The incredible stir that Eugene created was quite interesting. He sent me over 1,000 questions that were put in the question box on GoToWebinar. Obviously, we're going to cover all of them individually, but what I did there in this eye chart is I actually did go through and sort them and try to bin them by category so I would make sure I would cover everything. In general, what happens is that these all have kind of common roots. These questions all stem from a certain number of things, and so the biggies, which I'm going to cover explicitly as we go through the webinar this evening, and sure enough, it will absolutely last an hour and will probably be a little bit longer than that, so take a seat. But these are the things which are the big ones right now. Obviously, the first one, the meaning and dangers of Dissavow, is what kind of sparked this fire. How do you know if you're under a penalty? What do you do about it? That's obviously, from the last 12 months, that's been pretty much what's on people's mind. What works today? What can we show that actually is working currently right now? And there are some special rules about what we call niche sites or micro-niche sites and affiliate sites, and that got a lot of, there were a recurring theme of that in terms of the questions that you all posted. So I'll cover that in particular. And the next thing is, all right, well, given all that's changed over the last 2 years, hey, what's the future look like? What can we expect to have happen, and how do we know that what we're set up to do is actually even going to work? And so I'm going to answer all of those questions for you tonight. Now, I won't actually go through the list of 1,000 questions. That would be kind of goofy. But I will, like I said, I will make sure I cover it. And if I miss something, well, keep me honest. Post it in the chat. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I'm doing now and why. And I'll come back to that in just a moment as to why that's important. And bear in mind that it's a force stronger than Google. And so if you think that Google is capable of ruining your life, what you need to do is you need to find a bigger bear. I'll give you lots of references to free and some paid resources, and some of that I'm probably not going to throw URLs at you, but I'll probably tell you how to find them. And we'll follow up with that after the webinar. We'll make sure you get notes. Now I'm going to try to give you as much information. I've tried to distill that to, if I only had 1 hour, which I do approximately have about an hour, what's the most important thing I can tell you in that hour? So I'm going to leave out a bunch of stuff, and I'm going to summarize a bunch of stuff, and if you're interested, if you want to actually fact check me, then you can follow down the same path that I did in order to come to these conclusions. I'm going to give you enough information, hopefully, that you'll understand that I'm not completely just like BSing you. But in order to dive into each one of these areas with enough specificity that you can actually show that, yes, there's not a beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt kind of a thing, we can convict on that, we really don't have time for that. But I will give you enough information that you can actually go check it, all right? And so, who am I? And some of this Eugene already covered, thank you very much. PageRank sculpting, it's actually what the industry calls dynamic linking, much better name, I wish I'd thought of it back in 2003. There was a thing called mini-nets that Michael Campbell was teaching, and I teased out and tore apart the math for that and showed people why it worked. And then I went out and taught a whole bunch of even more complex linking strategies like that. As the one that started, the first one that started showing how to do page manipulation using JavaScript so that you could do things that was invisible to spiders. And so yes, somewhat what's going on is my fault. I mean, I'm not the only one out there that was teaching what we would consider black hat techniques today, but what I was teaching was what worked because I knew it was only about the money. And so as long as you weren't tricking people, that's okay. You can't quote-unquote trick search. Now, I transitioned what I do personally in my businesses and in my teaching that I do. I transitioned that starting in about 2008, and I'm sorry if not everybody got the memo about that. Dan and I formed SEO Brain Trust in late 2009 to teach our particular brand of doing SEO, quote unquote, the right way. All right, we'll talk more about that. You'll get a sense of that as we go forward. Okay, so let's start with the one that caused all this stir, and that's the Dissavow tool. Now, there are 4 different ways that people talked about the Dissavow in the marketplace. 4 different things they think Dissavow could do. They're thinking about the sneaky way, where Google's trying to do something sneaky. They're talking about it the evil way, where you can actually rat on your competition. And then there's some people would like to believe that there's kind of a blessing associated with it, but I'm going to tell you it's probably really kind of boring. So the sneaky Dissavow is where they're supposedly crowdsourcing spam detection. Now, Eugene already mentioned one of our mutual friends, Ed Dale, and love Ed to death. And the very, very few times, actually I can only count of one, and this was it, where I actually disagree with Ed. I don't really think that this is a crowdsourcing of spam, and I'll show you why. I'll back that up with some numbers. The evil disallow is where you could somehow use it for negative SEO, and so the idea would be that you could either create a bunch of stuff, or you could get links to your competitors, or et cetera, et cetera. And I'll show you why that doesn't really make a lot of sense either. Yeah, you could rat out other sites, or you could bomb your competitors with crummy links, but can you really make that work? We'll look at the detail and technical issues of that and show you that does really work very well. And then what I'm calling papal dispensation. Is it like, can you just like spam the heck out of the web, confess to Google with the Dissavow tool, and it's like a Catholic confession, and it's all washed clean, you can spam again? No, I don't think anybody really believes that, but some people would like to believe it. And so instead, what I'm going to show you is that Dissavow is actually pretty boring. It's convenient for Google, it's a comfort for webmasters, and it does have a very few cases where it's useful, so we'll talk about those. But let's get back to this whole notion, and that's the big one that keeps banning about, is that they're going to use this data somehow, that they're going to crowdsource spam, and that every time you enter that you're like kind of playing into their evil design, their grand plan. Well, I got news. They've already crowdsourced spam fighting. It's just that they've crowdsourced it with grad students, engineers, and computers. That group of 3 different crowds has been very, very good at fighting spam, and I'll show you how they use them. So the first of all is if you actually track computer science thesis and dissertation topics, you'll see what search and the advent of search, and particularly the growth of Google, has done to the computer science curriculum at major universities, most notably Stanford. If you'd like to get a summer internship at Google, which would be quite the quite the career-enhancing move. All you have to do is you have to, well, for a period of time, what you had to do is you had to write a paper about PageRank. And then for a little while after that, you had to write a paper about machine learning. And then there was kind of, it went into the whole link detection and link networks and spam detection and a whole bunch of stuff like that. And so what you find is there are literally hundreds of thesis and dissertation topics from advanced universities such as Stanford, where people have done, using subsets of the web, they have shown how to detect spam. Now, some of these are as much as 3 or 4 years old, and even then, they were able to get upwards of 70% spam detection. And this is what's published. This doesn't include what has been done within the companies where these individuals went to work. So there is no shortage of research and understanding of how to detect spam, both in terms of page features and in terms of linking features. That's the easiest way to get a job in a search engine. And it involves a couple of different kind of core areas of research. One is what's called graph analysis. So this is a picture that's, you know, kind of looking behind the machine inside the way PageRank is computed. This is a graph where each row and each column is a page, and so you can see that line on a diagonal. That means every page links to itself. We don't need to dive into the details of this, but you see those blocks there? Those are websites. And when you see where there's dots kind of scattered around, those are links between websites. This kind of an image of the web gives computer algorithms and computer science and algorithm researchers a view of the web that you can't possibly have without having the Google index. There's another one, and this one shows links between domains, and so this is kind of rolled up to the domain level, and this is out of a real research paper where on a subset of the web they detected spam, and the black circles and the white circles are respectively spam sites and non-spam sites. Now, how do they know a spam site? Well, they do it with human review, but once they have a human reviewed one, then they can go figure out who the rest of them are through spam clustering. So in this example, in the lower left-hand quadrant, we see those nodes have a lot more spam connected to them than the other group up at the top and over at the right. And so through what's called cut line analysis, there's at least 50 different algorithms for deciding how to cut this graph and how to attribute levels of spamminess to those different nodes. The other thing that they do is content analysis, and that's been a deep area of research, and most of that has gone into Penguin. But the number of words in the page and the title, the average word length, how much of a page is anchor text, whether it's visible or visible text. A lot of that's about page layout algorithms and actually beginning to process cascading style sheets and that kind of thing. A bunch of things like this that are not individually very reliable, but when you take them together, they become very reliable. And again, this is for the specific paper this is taken from. It's from 2006, so literally it's 6 years old, and it was showing upwards of 70% confidence in detecting spam pages. So they have a whole bunch of these guys, grad students and gals, creating a bunch of ways of detecting spam. Well, you have to actually implement it. Well, that's okay. We can implement that. Now, the numbers shown here are about 1.5 years or 2 years old, and it does, to be fair, account for more than just the SEO team. There are many projects inside Google, as you well know. So this includes things like Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools and Gmail and everything. But just consider for a moment the power of a company that has 5,000 engineers, and they're making 20 changes per minute on the code base 24/7. That's 40 updates per engineer per week. They've, as of 2011, 50% of the entire source code for Google, that's across all of their different apps, changes every single month. The source code itself doubled in size in 2010. I mean, these are just like incredible numbers. There is no company in the history of man that has done anything like this. They run automated testing on their entire code base every time it's built. So literally when somebody checks in a change, it goes through their review process, which is itself automated. People look at it and approve it or not. The owner of that section of the tree allows it to get checked in. It automatically reruns all of the tests. They have 100 engineers just managing the source code and the build process. So what a lot of companies would consider a very large engineering team is just a support staff for Google. In order to compile Google, right, they have to compile Google about 20 million times per year. Works out about 50,000 builds per day. There are 2,000 active projects that those 5,000 engineers are working on. They rerun 120 million test cases. And what they consider a reasonable cost to this, they've thrown 10,000 computers and 50 terabytes of memory at the job of compiling Google on a continuous basis. So again, if you have any concept of how large Google is, I hope I'm getting through you that they really don't need your help. They already have a better view of the world than you could possibly give them. They have 36 data centers across the world. There are between 20 and 50,000 CPUs per data center. Now, I actually think that counts cores, so how many boards that is and other things like that. If you do the simple math here, they probably have 1 million computers. What do you do with 1 million computers? They update the code at least weekly. This is actually, they televise one of their weekly code review meetings or code quality meetings, all right? And again, why? Well, because they have so much going on, because they can. So now what do you think about Dissavow? Do you think they really need us? Seriously? They know more about your links than you do. Now, they don't know your intent. And they don't actually care either, by the way, because spam is as spam does. So, yeah, maybe negative SEO could work, right? I mean, that's possible. Well, it's not unlikely, right? Okay. So do you think you could trick them? Well, maybe, but could you do it economically? And here's where we run into the first rub. Because you'd have to do enough spam to actually get above some sort of threshold. It would have to matter. And as we'll talk about in just a minute when we talk about recovery, okay, you have to get a lot, because a little bit of good undoes a whole lot of bad. Dan Thies ran a test case. Well, he didn't really run a test case. What happened was he pissed off a bunch of spammers, and so they tried to test it on him. They did a whole bunch of negative SEO on SEO Research Labs. Well, guess what? Sort of backfired. Now, the spammers claimed victory because of when they took the snapshots of the search results. But what really happened was the search rankings went up, and then they went back down as soon as the spam got taken out. You see, negative actually does work in the sense that if you send a bunch of links at somebody, it will raise their rankings for a short time until the spam gets taken out of the engines. We'll talk about how the filters work here in a few slides. And so what really happened was Dan's rankings went up, and then he went back down again, and guess what? They didn't even go back down to where they were originally. So the fact is that it actually proved that negative SEO does not work, that all SEO is positive SEO. Now the thing about it is that worked only because of good linking to Dan's site. If Dan had no linking to his site, yes, it can work. We'll talk about that when we talk about penalties. And Google doesn't care about that corner case. Let me go back to that slide and talk about that. You see, sites without any positive linking to them at all, Google doesn't care about because it's a non-issue, right? They're not even trying to rank sites that don't have positive SEO. So if a site with very little or no positive SEO on it gets some negative SEO on it, they're fine if that happens to hurt it. Doesn't matter. You still have to clean up. Now this gets to the the papal version of Dissavow. You can't just spam like hell and then disavow. It doesn't work. In fact, the standard is about 70%. You have bad links out there, you better knuckle down, because you're going to have to get about 70% of it cleaned up before you're going to get back in good graces. We've actually had some of our customers, we've taken them to 6 different requests before it finally got cleaned up, before they finally got the penalty lifted. You will not rebound from rankings when a manual penalty is lifted. And we'll talk about more of this about this in a minute, but manual penalties are essentially a punishment. They've already taken out the links. They just want you to admit to it. The other thing is getting out of trouble, always a higher standard than getting into it. And so what you can do safely without getting into trouble, you're going to have to undo a lot of that. You're going to have to be a better citizen in order to get back in graces than you'd have to be to just kind of stay out of trouble. So here's the real disavow, in my opinion. And again, we can talk about this, and if you disagree, by all means, call me out in the chat. But it's a standard format for Google. Here's the thing. All of those reconsideration requests, they came in all sorts of documents. I mean, some people were sending Word documents, for God's sake. I mean, read the directions. It says a shared Google Doc, but a lot of people weren't doing it. And then even if they were sending a shared Google Doc, where do you send the notes and say, hey, I tried to contact these people to get rid of the links, and I couldn't. What do I do now? And so that was coming in like almost Post-it notes. I mean, just all sorts of different formats. And so what Dissavow does, it gives a standard format for Google and webmasters to do that last mile of link cleanup. That's stuff where you just can't get it. And so one of the things that people have done is automated forum profiles. Horrible, horrible, horrible thing to do. Been telling people not to do that for years, but sure enough, people do it. They run a tool. It goes and creates a profile on a forum and throws away the login. So there is no way to go clean that up ever. Okay. And so you'll have to use Dissavow for something like that. So in these marginal cases, yes, it matters, but it's only in the marginal cases. And it doesn't take very much, by the way, and I'll give you a real case study here toward the end of the presentation, where even with a penalty, even without trying to get the penalty lifted, you can get your rankings improved just by doing good marketing. All right? So you should never need this. If you just do a little bit of good stuff, it'll neutralize the bad stuff, and we'll talk about Becky in a little while. If you follow our current teaching from the beginning, you'll be immune, and Dan proved that. And I mean, he hadn't actually done any quote-unquote linking on that site, ever. I mean, he'd never really quote-unquote SEO'd the site, despite the fact it's named SEO Research Labs. So just like, Nancy Reagan got this right, don't do drugs and you'll never do rehab. If you do need rehab, again, doing good marketing is a good start. And we'll talk about how to get over penalties here in a little bit, which kind of leads us to penalties. Because Dissavow is for the penalty case, right? I mean, that's the whole point here. Well, there's several different kinds of penalties, 4 really, and Dissavow is really only good for a small subset of them. So what are the 2 types, and what are the 2 reasons for getting penalties? What do they look like? How do you know if you have it? And then what do you do to fix it? And then, hey, guess what? Fixing it's not the end of the road. So first of all, there's automated penalties. Now, this is actually brand new with Panda a year and a half ago, whatever it was. It's the very first time in the history of Google that there was actually a negative ranking factor. In all other cases, it was a race of who had the biggest set of positives. Now, with Panda, there's actually a negative, and it's not just a page score, there's also a domain score, which again is a brand new feature. The biggest change in the history of Google was actually Panda. And it has nothing to do with how much search results are changing, anything that. It's about the philosophy underlying it. It's about the way the algorithm is composed. Automated penalties, you will not get a notice in Webmaster Tools. So, I mean, first of all, that's the first thing on this slide. If you do not have Webmaster Tools enabled on your website, you need to do that immediately after this webinar. Webmaster Tools is the only real conduit to and from Google for information. And no, they don't suddenly find out more about you when you authorize. The fact of the matter is, when you go into when you go and connect to Webmaster Tools right now, you will see they've already been collecting data. It's just that now you get to see it. All right. So if you don't have WMT installed or connected, you need to do that. But an automated penalty it's algorithmic. The computer does not send you a message. Manual penalties are where you get a message. Those are always human initiated. What happens is that Matt Cutts and his spam team of programmers, they're not reviewers, of programmers write software that does some analysis and thresholds different thing and flags them as suspects. And the suspects get reviewed by humans, and several times now, I guess actually about the 3rd time, we've had the quality raters guidelines leaked out of Google, and so you can see exactly what they're told to look for. There have been 2 different iterations of that before in the past. And so those suspects are reviewed by humans, and there's a flag raised, yes or no, and then somebody in some management position at Google assigns a penalty. All right? That's when you get a message. Now, it used to be, toward up until about 2 weeks ago is what my understanding is, is that some sites that were under manual penalties weren't even getting notified, just because it was like there were so many penalties. They were basically taking them in kind of least first in some sense. So there were the sites that were really, really bad, like beyond any sort of worth at all, they weren't even getting noticed. They weren't getting the notices at all. Now, we're told that that's not the case, that if there is a manual penalty, you will absolutely have a message waiting for you in Webmaster Tools. So that's good. What are the two kinds of different penalties you can get? Now, here's the thing. You can get a manual penalty for either one of these, either a linking-based penalty or a content-based penalty. You can also get an automated penalty for either one of those, all right? And so what is a linking-based penalty? This is linking schemes. This is blog networks, okay? If you are in a blog network now, if you have ever been in a blog network and you have not cleaned up those links, you need to be doing that. That is a link scheme that is absolutely forbidden under the guidelines. We'll talk about that a little bit too, about how the guidelines have changed. If you are doing link bombing, that is to say we have 100% of your link text says, Mallorca Vacation Rentals, okay? That's you're bombing yourself, with a 100% link text density. That is also considered quote unquote unnatural. If you're doing any content duplication or near duplication, so that would be like spinning, either human assisted or otherwise. So if you're trying to take it's not about what the text is, it's about the purpose of the text. And the closer the text is, two copies of the text to each other, the easier it is for them to detect that. All of these are primarily part of Panda and have been in place for over a year. It's just that more and more people are suffering as time goes on because they keep ratcheting up the thresholds, and that gets to what's called a data refresh, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So if you're being hit by unnatural links, if you're unnatural links warning in Webmaster Tools, that's a manual penalty related to the Panda algorithm, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Site-based penalties are things like keyword stuffing. So, and I'll show an example, I think, on the next slide. Also, the over-optimization of internal links. And so if you get a warning in Webmaster Tools that says your site violates some of our guidelines, all right, that means you're being hit by a content-based penalty, not a linking-based penalty. What they're saying there is there's something wrong on your site, and there's absolutely no excuse for that, and that you do have to clean all that stuff up to even begin to get that lifted. The kind of things to look for, like in addition to keyword stuffing, and I'll show you an example of that, over-optimization where you're using the same link text over and over again. Now, nav bars are generally okay, particularly when the navigation link matches the title tag nearly exactly, right? And so if you say pool supplies is the title of the page, and you link to that in your navigation bar with pool supplies, you're pretty good. Where you really get into problems is where it's not part of the normal navigation, which they're now actually sorting out, and instead you have in-body links. And so you're basically saying, well, I also want pool supply to rank for cheap pool supplies, and so I'm going to create an article, and then in the body of that article I'm going to use the text cheap pool supplies. Yeah, you might not be doing that. The other thing people are doing is footer links, and so they'll have this big block of 27 footer links at the bottom of every page. Don't do that either. That will get you a content penalty under Penguin. Thin or duplicate content, very common problems, like, well, my service area is Atlanta and Woodstock and Macon, and so I have 3 pages. Right? I say Macon plumber, Atlanta plumber, Woodstock plumber, and they all say the same damn thing. Wrong. You cannot do that. Now you can say cities we serve and list Macon, Atlanta, and Woodstock. You can do that. But 3 separate pages and this whole geo-targeted stuff, you will run afoul of Penguin every single time. There are some other things in Penguin, and there are some other things in Panda we haven't talked about, but those are the big rocks. Linking and content schemes in the one, and then site quality issues about primarily about keyword stuffing and over-optimization. So how do you recover from some of this? Well, like I said, a little good goes a long way to cleaning up the bad. And so if you get a manual penalty, and we'll talk about automatic penalties in just a second, but if you get a manual penalty, again, a manual warning, assume you are guilty. I mean, yes, could you be in that, call it 3% of a collateral damage that doesn't deserve a penalty? Yeah, you could. Yes, you're very special. It's possible. But the reality is, 90+% chance you're guilty. You need to go figure it out. You need to clean aggressively. Don't stop with one. When you do a reconsideration, make sure that you have something to show them. Don't just complain, well, I looked and I checked and everything looks good to me. That ain't going to cut it. You need to find out what's wrong. Clean aggressively. And then, at the same time, add good stuff. Like I said, it takes very little good to overcome the bad. Well, let's say that you get the penalty lifted. Now what? Well, for linking penalties, and this is what's really wild, right? Your rankings won't change. When you got the manual penalty notice, they had already removed those links from consideration. So here's the really sad thing, and complain if you will. I think it's kind of unfair too. That manual penalty for linking is really not a penalty, it's a punishment. The fact is they've already removed those links. So your ranking is not going to go up because they've already removed the links, and so when you go to remove the links, no change. So they've already discounted them. They just want you to come through and admit it, clean up, right? So, you know, it's sad. I mean, you're going to go to some work, and you're not going to get any new rankings. So, like I said, at the same time, do some good stuff while you're also cleaning up the bad stuff. Well, if it's not going to do you any good, why do it at all, right? Well, it's because the stuff you do later is not going to get tar-babied with the bad stuff you've done in the past. As long as you have that manual penalty in place, there's a pall over you, you know, that you're just not going to be really able to be successful with, I mean, in Google, right? So you do need to clean that stuff up. Site penalties, hey, it varies. With site penalties, and again, these would be primarily Penguin, yeah, you clean up the keyword garbage and you fix the over-optimization. Yes, you should likely at least see a lift in rankings. And you may actually, well, you may see it before they lift it, or you may see it a couple of weeks after they lift it. I mean, we've seen both cases. It's also possible, again, limited cases, that you don't see anything happen at all. But like I said, it can go anyway. So what works today? We've already talked about this a little bit. You know, what's good? You know, we have to have good content, not over-optimized, no keyword stuffing. Obviously, just by naming the problems, I think you can figure out some of the solutions. Just don't do that. So what does work today? Well, you know what? The guidelines have not changed. I mean, just go look. Those webmaster guidelines, they have not changed. They've added to it here and there. You know, when characters like me came along, they actually, I think it's about the time they added we don't like automated queries. But the fact is they've done almost nothing to the guidelines over the year except maybe add some examples. So the change really is now they're serious about it. You know, it's always this something I always didn't like, and now they're just going to take action. What's interesting, though, is that practice, what really is possible on the web today, and Eugene already alluded to this, and we'll talk about it in just a moment, is it's actually caught up with theory, all right? And so, and this was in the original blog post too, Eugene talked about this, about the whole notion of links being citations. There's supposed to be a vote that, yes, this is good stuff, so I've linked to it. And this is what they used to call the uniquely democratic nature of the web. Don't get me started on it being an oligarchy instead of democracy, but anyway. So why is this so different today as opposed to yesteryear? It's about the old linking and the new linking. That's the difference. And so I'll talk about why linking has changed and why that's important, why it makes our job as SEOs completely different, and what that new SEO looks like. So at this point, if you like I said, if you have a penalty in place, I hope I've told you what kind of penalty it likely is and what in general you need to do about it. And now what we're going to do is go into the piece where it's the positive part of the story, if you will, right? And so if you have a penalty, you need to be doing this. If you don't have a penalty, you still need to be doing this because this is the new SEO. All right. This is what the web used to look like. It was a broadcast channel. It was just television in a different platform. All right. When Eugene and I started this silliness many, many years ago, you had to be a complete geek to have a website. I don't know if you remember that far back, those of you on this call, but you had to know like Perl and CGI, and you had to code HTML 2.0 like from scratch in a text editor. Like there weren't even WYSIWYG design tools. Dreamweaver didn't exist. All right. And so when we talked about, well, I'm going to get a link from somebody, and that link is a citation, a vote of confidence. Well, wait a minute, time out. It's a bunch of geeks voting for each other. Are you kidding me? Like, what the hell is a natural link in that context? The reality is the entire web was controlled by a few geeks, and everybody else was sitting there viewing whatever the hell we wanted to broadcast. That was the old web. It was just broadcast. The new web is totally unlike that. Geeks no longer control the web. Visitors control the web. And it's because now it is actually possible to have a natural link. Visitors can now link to your website accidentally. You know what I mean? In a Facebook post that gets spidered, or Twitter, which then gets, the Twitter stream gets picked up and put on someone's blog because of RSS, and then that gets spidered links, or they have paper.li set up with their current, Twitter feed of what they're reading. All that stuff gets spidered and indexed. You see, there's a bunch of things like that where the so-called social ecosystem leaks into spidered content. And that's the reason, as Eugene said, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I guess, I started pointing out that, look, teenagers will accidentally create more links during one semester in school than Webmaster could actually do on purpose during most of a year, right? That's the new web. We as webmasters have lost control of it. So you might as well, you can't beat it, you might as well join it, because this gives rise to the new SEO. The problem we have is, Google knows this too, they have exactly the same problem, and so they've had to change Google dramatically, literally, since January 2011. That was the beginning of the change. It was called Farmer. It actually sort of got folded into Panda. Nobody really talks about it. If you really want to go to the origins, it's caffeine. Caffeine caused them to be spidering the web far more rapidly, far more deeply, and what happened was they realized that about 85% plus of what was being added to their index was complete garbage, and it completely overwhelmed their algorithms. Now, the original algorithm, which is the same simple thing that I've taught for many, many years, and you all know and love, good link text, good title tag, and as much page rank as you could beg, borrow, or steal, that algorithm still operates in the center of the castle in the ivory tower, and it's been there basically since 2004 if you include title tag. All right? So if you can get into the castle, you get the same old algorithm. The thing, is that they had to keep the garbage out of the castle. And so they've surrounded it by all sorts of filters, moats, barbed wire fences, spiked pits, brigades of one sort and another, named Panda, Penguin, and countless unnamed others that are not actually formal parts of either one of those. So as long as you can run the gauntlet and get into the castle, you get exactly the same algorithm. The change is now there's so much more that you have to know about the filters that it's like, the algorithm? Who cares about that anymore? Right, okay, yeah, I get it. Build more authority, make sure you have relevance, which means like title tag and 1 or 2 links. That's it. Now, how do we get past the filters? That's the big question. Because the core algorithm, like I said, hasn't changed. We probably can go ahead and skip over this. We can talk more about it in questions if people want. But it's really simple. It's just simple arithmetic. I mean, the Google ranking algorithm is probably only about 5 or 6 pages of code, except that it operates at scale, so that changes things. The filters just add new factors. And so if the simple ranking algorithm, which is more than 3 factors, they claim 200, and that may actually be about right. And so you have a Panda score and a Penguin score, and you have a something or other score, right? Those just get added. They get added to the algorithm. Of course, some of these now are negative factors instead of just positive ones, which is, like I said, is a change. So how do you get past the Penguin? Because in order to get into the castle, you got to go past both Penguin and Panda. How do you get past Panda? Well, no links, no link schemes, right? Links should be a surprise. If you know before you got the link that you're going to get it, that sounds like you requested it or you have a special relationship. I would be concerned. Now, sure, that's going to happen. You're going to phone call, or somebody's going to write a report about you, or they're going to say, "Wow, I'm going to link to you on my website." Yeah, then you're going to know it's going to happen. But what you don't want to then is say, "Oh, well, Bob, would you also please use this text in the link?" Stop that. All right. do not be requesting different link texts. Let that fall wherever the chips may fall. You want to make this quote unquote natural. Absolutely no spinning of content, human or otherwise, right? If you're taking the same article that communicates exactly the same idea and making 4 versions of it, or God forbid 40 or 400, you will absolutely run afoul of Panda at some point. Make sure that all of the content that you build has the author attribution, and that's rel equal author. And you can literally just Google rel equal author, and you'll dive into the maze of how to make that work, which, by the way, is non-trivial, unfortunately, but it is what it is. If you do just this, no reuse of content and no link schemes, 90% chance you will miss Panda until you get past at least that set of guards. Escaping Penguin is actually technically easier. However, I find that more and more people screw this part up more than Panda. I mean, it's as long as people didn't, do just outright spinning and outright blog networks, then, Pandas hasn't been too much of a problem for them. Penguin, for a lot of people, has been a problem. Now, Dan created a thing called the red pen test, and it's a very, very simple process, and one of the resources you need to go look up. And amazingly, if you just type red pen test into Google, you'll end up with the page. It's on our public blog at SEObraintrust.com. But rather than go try to dig for it, just like I said, just use Google. Just type in red pen test, and it'll show you as a top link. Now, the other thing you should be doing, and some of this gets into areas where we're not entirely certain exactly what's working and what's not working and how this came here. So just bear in mind that some of this gets to be a little bit of a conjecture here, as what we talk about trust factors. Things that are significant of non-spammers, right? And so these are what are in search engine parlance are called signals. And so what you'll end up with is any particular idea, any particular measure, any particular factor will not be, well, it's not right only about maybe 60% of the time. But if you have a whole bunch of them that are right 60% of the time, you end up with something that's very reliable. Combine or remove repetitive content before you get the trust factors, and be careful of your advertising. Now, advertising may actually, we're not sure if that is actually part of Panda or Penguin anymore. It's uncertain. But if you have lots and lots of advertising kind of above the fold, as they say, you end up, that ends up being seen as a quality factor, and one or both of those algorithms will kick in. Repetitive content we already talked about, like if you have 3 different cities you work in, you really need to make that one page. All right, and you can run into this a lot with attorneys and other service professionals, where they have the area they work in, the geographic area they work in, they try to make a page for each one of them so they can rank for it. Really bad idea in the current environment. Let's talk about trust factors. Oh no, I'm sorry, keyword link and keyword and link stuffing. Yeah, the first paragraph here is actually straight out of the Google Webmaster Guidelines. All right, so this is an example, and the way they usually found those examples is they found them on the web. They didn't actually create one. And you can see here that sure, I mean, this person is like trying to rank for cheap blankets in France vacation. All right, completely garbage paragraph. Anybody can read that and know that that was crafted for search solely. There's no reason people would ever write that for any other reason, particularly those links. The one below it is that one I created, and it actually comes from an example, but I changed it a little bit to protect the guilty. And so this is one of the things where people say, well, gee, this is great content. It's actually very valuable. And say, yeah, all right, but would you talk this way to somebody? I mean, if you read that aloud, does that sound right to you? Most people don't understand this until they have their own vacation rental, and then they realize just how wonderful vacation rentals really are. We are the leader in vacation rental in the industry, and we would love to help you find your own vacation rental today. Nobody talks that way. You see, that is so keyword stuffed, it's just unreasonable, but we find that a lot. When you read Dan's red pen test, he talks about this. Literally, if you're writing the way you would talk to a person, a friend that you're describing some service to, it's more likely that instead of that number of repeats of your keyword text, a key phrase, you'd have pronouns, or you'd have some other way of saying what you're trying to get across. So it'd be very surprising if you write, say, a few hundred words. If you mentioned your key phrase more than about twice, you got to be asking yourself whether that's really necessary or not. Okay, now trust factors. One of the things that we found a lot of, and there, I mean, there's some papers on this, and there's some patents on it too, but that doesn't prove anything, frankly. But one of the things we notice is address and phone number on the site. Every page is really good. You'll notice we did that on SEO Brain Trust. It's in the footer. Spiderable contact email. I know, yeah, you'll get spam, but you're going to get spammed anyway. Privacy policy. That's actually a part of the AdWords guidelines that the quality factors for AdWords. And in fact, they want the privacy policy like immediately next to the opt-in button for use in AdWords. And so again, that's another one of those things. Well, the other thing we found is, like, in one particular case, and again, these sort of anecdotes don't prove anything. They just give us an idea of something to test next time. Was literally where there was a link to a privacy policy page, but it didn't actually have any privacy policy information on it. And so once the privacy policy page itself was filled out, that actually had a positive influence. Clear who-is data, we don't know if they're using that or not, but it makes a lot of sense from conversion perspective too, by the way. So these are some things you should absolutely take a look at, clean up as much of that as you can, and this really kind of gets into the real marketing rules anyway. This is the play on word. What are the rules for real marketing and real marketing rules? Because what we're really talking about here, since visitors now are the ones creating links, what does that tell us? See? That tells us it's not about search anymore. It's really about our visitors. It's really about humans. We have to be human-centric in our SEO, because SEO per se is no longer about SEO. It's about human concerns. All right? So just say no. I'm not going to say SEO is dead, because it's not. SEO has just changed. It's now real marketing. And we'll talk about the age of math and the age of marketing a little bit later, but let's just figure out what's real marketing mean. Relies upon the one force stronger than Google's algorithm. And I told you that there was something, and it's kind of the reason that I do what I do today, as opposed to teach the latest mathematical trickery. It's because humans are wired the way they're wired. The way marketing works has always worked that way and will always work that way. And we'd have to have some serious genetic changes before it would be any different. And here's the thing. Google has the same customer base we have. We get a lot of our traffic from Google. Google gets all of their traffic from humans. And so they have to abide by the same rules we do. They have to attract and engage humans. As long as we're attracting and engaging humans, we actually play on Google's team, not counter to it. All right? So the new natural SEO is really marketing. It starts with knowing what your market is, who your market is, who is in that market. Find your voice, your differentiated message. How are you unique in the marketplace? Attract people to you. Engage with them, be attractive to them, so that you can have something happen like Eugene did, where he's got hundreds of posts on his blog. See, that is a measure of engagement. We'll talk about the different engagement metrics. You have to build for humans, not robots. And then the way you make all this work, because this sounds like a lot of work, right? You work smart, not hard, because your real competition is not Google, it's your other competitors. And so I'm going to break this down in the smallest size chunks I know, using a metaphor that everybody above the age of puberty understands. And that's what I call Leslie's Guide to Dating. Because by the time I get through this slide, you realize that you already know how to do natural marketing. And you do that today. If you just do that today, you will command Google within your niche. So it's a Friday or a Saturday night, and you go out to a local bar and you don't know anybody, and maybe you didn't even bring your wingman with you, okay, or a wing girl. Well, you have to do is find a group. You look around and you find a group that you might want to engage with. Then you have to listen and figure out what they're talking about and kind of who they are, and whether that maybe you want to choose a different group, or is this a good group to be joining. You then join the conversation little by little, because they were there first. They already are in a conversation. It's up to you to engage and join that group yourself. Then, of course, you can segment your market. Who are you really interested in within that group? and take the engagement to the next level, track and increase engagement, and make sure that, well, am I on the right path here? Is this working or not? And then pretty soon you're in a position where you can guide the interaction and be a leader within that group. That's marketing. All marketing is conversation. When you know how to communicate with the people in your space, within your niche, within that target demographic you're trying to serve, that is marketing. And for some reason, most of us were, at least at one point in time, pretty good at dating, and we go online and we completely screw it up. We forget that all we really need to do is date our market. There's already a conversation in your market. For example, why are you on this webinar? There was a conversation about Dissavow. Eugene jumped in the middle of it, right, caused a big ruckus, and got a whole bunch of you, way more than will fit on this webinar, to show up and continue the conversation. Well, why am I here? Well, because I'm in the conversation too. I saw Eugene's post, and I reached out to him and said, dude, friend, pal, no, I don't really agree with that. Let's talk about it. Right? That's part of the conversation. Now, you could do article marketing. Is that part of the conversation? No, that's walking into the bar, standing up on a bar stool, and reading 1,000 words of, something you wrote the night before. That's not joining the conversation. The conversation existed. It's up to you to join it, and that's marketing. Now, to do that, you have to be attractive. You have to have a message that people want to engage with, which is the case with Eugene as an example, right? Obviously, hundreds of people wanted to engage with him, and there's thousands of people registered for this webinar. Selling, marketing, it's just pickup. All right, so how do you do that in the web? Well, the first thing about the web is it's a very, very, very big bar. So there's a lot of noise. And just like a bar, if you sound like the guy next to you, you're just part of the noise. So you have to get past me too. You have to be a brand. And one of the questions we got was, well, isn't it true that Google prefers brands? No, not the way you mean it. Brand doesn't mean Home Depot. Brand doesn't mean Apple. Brand means different. Brand means differentiated. And so you are your brand. And the noise is your opportunity. There's so much noise because there's so much stuff that's all alike, there's really no choice until you come along with a slightly different message. Be different in a good way. You become a trusted resource, and so when people say, hey, I think this is the way things are, I think Dissavow might be this way, and then a whole bunch of people show up and give you their opinion, and some are agreeing, and some are disagreeing, and some are just wanting to ask the question themselves. When you go then provide real value by responding to those questions, arranging a webinar, doing any of the other things that we all know as marketers and as people who used to date know to do, what happens? We provide real value, we engage with our community, and we're attractive in a different, unique way. That is your brand. And engagement is that process where you actually begin selling, right? So do you have a Twitter following? Do you have a Facebook fan page? Are you running a blog? All of those things that you can see for sure that Eugene does and that we do at SEO Brain Trust. Are you getting feedback? That's part of engagement. Are you getting people retweeting your stuff? Are you getting people liking your stuff? Are you getting people commenting on your blog? Those are metrics that you should be tracking, and guess what? Yes, links are a kind of metric now because it's not geeks creating them, it's people. But links is the last kind of engagement. Way before you get those natural links, what happens is you'll have followers and mentions and word of keyboard, like word of mouth, except we don't use our mouth, we use our fingers now. You'll have traffic, subscribers, etc., all of those things, and then you will have natural links. Those will be the last thing on your list of things you can track, and that's what actually drives search. All the rest of that stuff, social does not actually drive SEO. I know that's a lot of, people would claim that's the truth. I can tell you that's not true. It's very tedious and difficult to do to actually go find where social leaks into kind of the spider sphere, if you will, of where it gets picked up. I've done only a couple of times, once on a webinar and then once in person or a live event in August. But it's very difficult to do because they're kind of flash in the pan, they go away, but they do get counted. They get there long enough for Google to spider them. So social does drive search in a roundabout way through the ecosystem. But more than that, social drives humans, and humans drive linking, which drives search. That's the real path. So what I'm asking you to do is stop with the loopholes. Now, I know that's a little bit strange because you think, gee, isn't he the loophole kind of guy? Yeah, I was. And I still do loopholes, but they're business process loopholes. You know, how can you optimize what you're doing in order to make it more effective at a lower cost than your competition? That's the real loophole now. Because what I really want you to do is leverage reality. Google is not your competition. Your competition is your competition. Like, duh, right? Real business is about leverage. How do you get it done? How do you do real marketing in such a way that you make money, and you make money faster or better or, you know, whatever, than your competition? That's how you win, is better marketing at lower cost. Now, if you do this, you follow the Wayne Gretzky quote, don't chase position. Be where the puck is going to go. And the puck is already here, by the way. We already talked about this. The new SEO is almost no SEO. It's mostly about not doing. Do not repeat your words in the copy. Do not optimize your internal links. Use calls to action instead of keywords. Do not quote-unquote build links. If you ever say, I'm going to have a link-building campaign, you're probably way down the slippery slope into ruin. And never request specific anchor text. Marketing is the doing part. SEO is the not doing part. Marketing, you know your customer, be a brand, attract your audience. Those are the kind of things. And actually, if you do it the right way, it's easy to do, and it has much longer legs than SEO. Now, we actually teach this, by the way. We have a marketing course, and that's actually all 12 weeks of it. We'll talk about that in a little while. But there are 3 big questions we haven't gotten to yet, and I want to get to those. So what are the special rules for niche sites or micro-niche sites? What are the special rules for affiliates? And then the big, granddaddy of all questions, what's the future of SEO? And I think you probably know where I'm going on that. Niche marketing. First of all, if you have 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 niche sites, stop. Pick one and lead it. Pick one market and lead it. 1 in a million, if you're saying, well, only 1 in a million people would be interested in that, do the math. That's still a big business. Engagement goes up as you niche down. As the narrower your focus, the more emotion there is within that niche, and the easier it is for you to go command it. And here's the thing. As the web gets larger and there are more and more opportunities and options and products and information, the long tail actually gets longer. So what you might consider the long tail today might be the short tail for the next sub-niche. And the thing is, niche actually is favored by Google, and not in a direct sense. It's just that the algorithms, the way the algorithms stack up, the more you niche, the easier it is, right? Affiliate marketing is a special case. Now, bear in mind that affiliate marketing per se is just what I would call low overhead e-commerce, right? Because you don't have to handle the product. Somebody else does it. It's kind of like drop shipping, but even easier than that. Well, that's the thing is there are no special rules for affiliate marketing sites. Now, you will see affiliate sites mentioned in not necessarily glowing terms in Google Webmaster Guidelines, and I encourage you to read it and take it to heart, because what it's really talking about is non-value add websites. It just so happens that affiliate websites, a lot of them tend to be what I would call lazy businesses. The reason they're doing affiliate marketing is because they're not really committed to build a business. They don't really want to have any expense in it. They're not committed to building it. And so what happens is they just kind of throw pages up, and they're not the best quality. There are a lot of repeated content or spun. That's not a real business. I don't care whether that's a drop ship or you're a wholesaler or what you are. That's, spam is as spam does. And so you have the same level, you have the same standards that you have to meet as an affiliate marketer as you do as any other kind of marketer. There's no special rules for you. It's just that there's a special opportunity to disobey them, because with affiliate marketing, you technically don't have to do any of that stuff, because you just get all your information from your data feed from your vendor, and away you go, right? Doesn't work anymore. That's considered a thin affiliate, and it just won't cut it. But if you're willing to do marketing the right way, then you could run an affiliate business that way, but why would you? Now, you could do it to test out. So just make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, right? You could enter a market and test it with affiliate marketing, and Ed Dale, of course, back in the underachiever days, this is how he and Frank did this. They would test a market with a product, and then they'd go build the product themselves or have it built and immediately double their net profit. So if you're doing that with that in mind, it's a fantastic thing. Now, e-commerce sites, I only said 3 questions. This will make 4, actually. E-commerce sites, same thing. Like I said, affiliate is just an e-commerce site that doesn't pack and ship. And so you really do have to rewrite your product descriptions. We get a lot of pushback from this on people, but yes, you really do. All of them. At some point, you do. Now, there's an order to do them in. We don't have time to go through that right now. And no, your product pages, your store is not enough. You really are going to have real content. Even if your product is like dead boring, like, I don't know, brooms and mops, you're going to have some content. And recognize that every product is an information-rich product. It just may be you're so close to it, you think it's so boring that there's no way to do that. That's not the case. We have customers and clients that are in all sorts of really, really boring niches. But bear in mind that you can't be using just the vendors, the manufacturers' product descriptions and get away with that for very long. You are going to have problems with that. So what is the future of SEO? Well, it's more of the same, but in order to describe that, I want to look at the present. And so we're going to look at 3 honest-to-God case studies that happened from the time November 2010 to the present. All right. So the first one is a guy named Nick Lemons in the UK. In spring of 2010, he had no job and a brand new baby, and he started his first website in October or September of 2010. Okay, great time to do that, right? He had 29 visitors his first month, but he says, to be honest, I think about half of those were family members. Now, at that point, whether or not he should have done this, but he puts himself out there in the category of people who really do end up being successful. He took a big risk and spent $2,500 on a product from Dan and me in November of 2010. That turned out, in retrospect, to be a great decision because he quadrupled his traffic in 1 month, which, again, quadrupling 29 is not that great. But as of May of this year, he had 10,700 visitors. He's replaced and then doubled his former professional income as a career consultant. And he's now, because of his web success, he's now a published author. He's writing a weekly column in the local newspaper, and he's doing SEO consulting, which he admits in 2010 he didn't know anything about SEO. This was during the time that Panda and Penguin were killing a whole bunch of people who were brand new, right? And Nick was brand new. Michael's another relatively new guy. He actually joined us in 2009, but he kind of diddled around with one thought and another. So he and his brother actually had their first full time in business in 2011, and he did 6 figures in sales. Now, in their particular market, which is so cutthroat that he doesn't even want anybody to to know about it, that's like a drop in the bucket. 6 figures is small. It's like a 10-figure market. So in the first half of 2012, though, which is actually his slow season, they're up 300% year over year. And we have to actually, I should do another interview with him next week to find out where he's at this point, because he's actually, at the point in time I talked to him in June, he was estimating to be 500 or 700% growth year over year when they got to the end of summer, which is their busy season. His AdSense actually pays for their quote-unquote link building. The way Dan and I teach link building, he's actually running AdSense on those information sites. And it's actually paying for itself, or nearly. Plus, he's getting about $3,000 a month in revenue from referral fees, from actual referral sales from those sites. And so, developing content around his products is actually a profit center, not a cost. Now, at the other end of the experience spectrum, we have Becky, who was an SEO professional who saw Panda come along and was like worried as hell about that, and then the announcements about Penguin and what was going to happen. She thought, oh wow, 2012 could be the end of my business. Now she already was engaged with us, and so she saw this coming, and as a result, she has not lost any of her 24 clients. She's added more. All of her clients are growing. And one process from our course is actually the foundation of her client offering. Now, she does some other things on top of it, but there's one core thing that she offers her clients. Now, again, what's amazing about this, right, is this is during the Panda and Penguin period, where she was doing what everybody in SEO, right? She was doing the same thing, standard bookmarking and link building and directory submissions and article market, all that stuff. She stopped doing all of that, switched over to doing completely new practices, because based on a test she ran, which is one of the very few cases where we have what's called a twin test. She had 2 sites in exactly the same market, very similar products, both information products. They both got hit at the same time, literally the same day. They both got hit with a penalty. She started link liberation processes on one of the sites and left the other one as it is. The one where she's done the remediation process on, even without doing any reconsideration request, it's now come back to pre-penalty levels, and the other one is off about 90% compared to pre-penalty level. And actually, it says continues to go down. I'm not sure how. I think there's good support at 0. And so this was during a period of time when Panda and Penguin were released. And sure enough, I mean, Becky was hit by it as well, but she changed what she was doing and completely recovered from that and has not lost any of her clients. So what does it look like from 12 to 24 months? Are we we're gonna see the repeat of the last 18? Well, God forbid, right? However, I think we can be certain of a few things. First, there will be more and stronger filters. What they've done to protect the ivory tower, they're going to keep doing that. They're going to ratchet up Panda and Penguin even more, and probably add some other. They'll probably stop naming them. It will become over time, certainly in the next 2 years, impossible to track real rankings. There's so much geotargeting, so much personalization. Even now, you have to question whether or not you're really tracking rankings or not. There will be a continued blurring of social and search. They basically already collided. You really can't do search without social, or in my opinion, even the other way around. I don't think you can do it either. Social, to a large extent, depends upon search for a lot of the discovery process. A further splintering of traffic sources, which kind of continues from that. I think there are more and more things like Pinterest cropping up that will become significant traffic sources. You're going to have to take all of those into account, and some of them will be more meaningful in one market than another. Leadership is the only real marketing. And this is something a lot of people talk about, and a lot of people are actually involved in teaching. Now, that's a lot of bad news maybe, but the good news is there's even more opportunity. The opportunity on the web is actually accelerating, not decelerating. We're not actually in a stage where there's quote-unquote consolidation. We're a long ways away from that. So if you've ever considered doing a web business, for those of you who don't have one now, don't wait any longer. Get in now. The water's fine. So back in the day, I launched what was called I call the Age of Math. The Age of Math ended with Panda. Yes, can you still do math? Are there still people out there that are gaming and looking for and using the next loophole? Yes, there are. However, it's uneconomical. The new math of SEO is business math. It's about how we do real marketing in the most cost-effective way. And marketing is that new SEO. Now, Dan Thies was ahead of the curve. He started doing link liberation in 2007. By the way, I was still winning against it in 2007 because we were still in the age of math. It really kind of crossed over at the end of 2007 or somewhere in 2007. I realized, you know what? The math is uneconomical compared to doing marketing. There's so much opportunity beyond just search, when math is too narrowly focused on just search, that if you do real marketing and you do it the right way, you can beat math every day of the week. Yes, go for it. Use it if you want to, but I'm saying don't do it. And here's the thing. Math is chasing. As long as you're working on the latest loophole, you're chasing Google. You're just chasing Matt Cutts and his spam team and close to 1 million computers, right? Not a real good chase. You're going to lose that foot race. And it has zero leverage because all you can do is game Google. If you game Google, you get nothing out of Facebook or Twitter or Pinterest, right? Marketing, when you do marketing the right way and become a market leader, you're positioned where everybody else is going, Google included. So learn market leadership, right? If you don't have, you shouldn't have a vice president of SEO, right? There should not be anywhere. There should not be a guy with that or gal with that on his desk. There should be a person who's in charge of establishing your company as a market leader. Now, there are a bunch of people teaching this, to be fair, right? I mean, Dan and I did not invent market leadership. I think Norman Vincent Peale invented who knows, right? Carnegie or Ford, someone invented market leadership. But these are people you probably know. Ed Dale talks about market leadership 100% of the time. His entire message is about market leadership. Don Crowther really talks about market leadership. He's more thoroughly focused on social marketing, for example. SEO Brain Trust. Dan and I talk about market leadership. It's just we're kind of, we're kind of Don's twin in that regard, right? Instead of focusing on social, we focus on search. Both of us talk about all of it. So I'm going to talk to you right now in the next few minutes, probably about 5. I'm going to talk to you about our course in market leadership. And if you want this course, great. If you don't, that's great too. Just go get somebody. If you don't know how to do market leadership, go get somebody to teach you, because that is the new SEO. If you do that, you never have to worry about Dissavow. Pandas and penguins cease to be a concern to you. The only reason I would even be studying pandas and penguins right now is to help other people with that problem. None of the marketing that I do has anything to do with pandas and penguins because it's all focused on humans and market leadership. We break that down to a 12-week program we call Link Liberation Pro, and I'll spin through this really quickly, and then we'll take some questions. But it's a 12-week course of video instruction. It doesn't matter where you start. You have to kind of know what a web is and have a computer. And we update it on a routine basis. And so if you buy this, and it's entirely up to you, but if you do, you get 12 months of updates, lifetime access to the material, and of course there's Q&A on all the videos. You can ask questions. We have an active community at this point of people. We've actually, there are people even from Link Liberation 1 in 2007 that are actually in the community today. And that kind of brings us to the lineage of this. Link Liberation 3, the number 3, you get it. It's a complete rewrite. We've kept the best of the old stuff. The biggest rewrite was Link Liberation 2 back in 2010. We've kept all of the best stuff from that, plus a bunch of things have changed, new opportunities added, so we put that in there. We've rearranged the course because every time we teach it differently and better. It's tested and verified by all of our top students. Again, people have been using this since '07. The key thing for tonight's call is that it's at this point we can say that it absolutely works post-Panda and post-Penguin. At this point, people have been using it literally all through the entire period of Panda and Penguin. Some people brand new from scratch that have not lost, not missed a beat. Other people where they've had to go back in and fix or modify their processes and recover from some penalties. Both of those cases are represented in the customer base and the student base at this point. So if you want to start a business right, this is one way to do it. Like I said, there are other people you could study with as well. If you want to fix one in trouble, I don't know of a better way to do this. I don't know anybody actually teaching how to fix a business in trouble other than Dan and myself. You can multiply an existing business, or you can go and grow somebody else's for a fee. About 70% of our student base at this point is doing consulting, either on the side or as a full-time gig. Rinse and repeat. You can do this as many times as you want to. A person we didn't talk about is a guy named Phil Weaver, who literally is running 8 businesses, and he doesn't actually have to do much in each one of them. He sets up the processes. He has other people actually run those businesses. What LL3 will not help you with is tricking Google. I hope I made that pretty clear. It will not help you run 100 websites, and I still get this question. Well, I can't. That would take too much work to run on my 100 websites. Well, if you have 100 websites, and you have to do anything to them at all, if you can even remember their names, it means that that none of them are any good, right? I mean, it's like I'll take your 100 websites and I'll take one of my students that has only one website, and I'll bet you my student's making more money. And so I would encourage you to focus on one and make that a success. And if you want to do another one, great. What I'd encourage you to do is actually have an exit event, sell those successful one, and do it over again. And we have, again, there's lots of people in our student base that are serial entrepreneurs. Website flipping is another thing, and I know Flippa and some of those things. Yeah, I mean, you could actually kind of use portions of LL3 for a website flipping, kind of scheme, but nah, it's not really for that. It's really for market leadership. I don't want to try to even force it to that. So, Pan and Penguin proven, 12 months, kind of a summary here. Hope I didn't bore you with that, but it's not available right now, and so I'll talk about why we're even having this conversation. But here's the thing: it's going to be. We only re-released it in June, and there were a bunch of people who were otherwise occupied and couldn't get in, on the launch, and Eugene was one of them. And so we will be, sometime before the end of the year, we will be bringing it out at $1,295 for the 12-week course, which is a great deal, and we expect to have pretty good results from that, pretty good uptake. However, we're not ready to do it yet. And then comes along this damn Dissavow thing, and there's obviously a lot of angst in the marketplace about penalties, and frankly, there is only one best way to fix penalties, and that's market leadership. And so, as a favor to Eugene, we've created an offer where we've created a shopping cart that's open. So for only $497, it's one time for lifetime access to the course, which is 60% off, 61 some change, % off of what it will be priced at when we go to public with it. You get the full course. It's not like a scaled down version or a light or anything like that. And so if you're interested in doing that, learning market leadership from Dan and myself, and I encourage you to take us up on it, because it's not going to be available at that price for very long. I mean, we're talking about exactly when we need to pull it, because we need to get on with kind of the next set of things we're doing. It's probably going to be this Saturday. I think we're talking about, and Eugene will have to actually nail that down, but Saturday midnight, probably Pacific Standard Time, is when we'll take it down. And so that's that's what I have. I hope I've explained Dissavow from my perspective, and again, it's only a perspective. The kinds of penalties and what you have to do if you find you're in any under any of them, and that really kind of the one answer that should answer all of the questions, which is do real marketing, right? Don't think about SEO so much. Think about real marketing, how you serve a marketplace, how you serve those customers. And we'll make sure that the copies of these slides are available to you, because those really represent the middle part of this presentation really represents your checklist. If you just go through there and do the things I've told you, it would be very, very difficult for me to understand how you could ever be hit with a negative ranking factor at Google. So with that in mind, I'm happy to stay as long as you want to, Eugene. We can turn it over for questions and see what people have on their minds.
All right. Yeah, I think we'll just take a couple of questions. I think most of the questions that people have asked have I think been answered through the content, but a few remain. One, just the big ones are we recording this? And yes, we are recording it. I think we've got 4 recordings sort of going on, so statistically one of these things should actually work out, so we should get that recording. We plan to send it out probably tomorrow. We need some time to edit it up and upload it and that kind of thing, so you should get, if you've registered, you should get an email with those recordings. There's some questions about the slides. I think just Leslie just answered that. Yes, we will be sending out the slides as a resource for you guys. A couple of questions that haven't been directly tackled head on. There's been a ton of questions just about local, and is all this stuff that you've been talking about specific to local? I guess a lot of local is really, really big, obviously.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I should have addressed that. You know what? That was in there, and I did see that amidst the thousands of questions. And so here's the thing about local. So there's several different things. When you look at a search results page, one of the diagrams is not in here is about what Google called universal search, where they actually do a mix-in of results. And so you've got the paid stuff, which only actually gets about 9 to 12% of clicks. Then you've got the Google Maps and 7-pack and all of the other different ways that they display local results. The challenge, there are two challenges here. So for a local business, they will show up in the map or in the 7-pack, some portion of the time, depending upon what what the search is for. And so that is an important thing to consider when you're talking to local businesses to quote unquote optimize their map. Challenge there is that the engagement on maps in terms of a searcher perspective on maps is actually very poor, which is the reason they keep testing variations at Google. The reason is they don't have a SERP description, they don't have a search description there, and so there's not enough scent, is what it's called in search parlance, to confirm for the user that yeah, that's what I really want. And so it's almost it's only applicable to the very short tail, very navigational brand query. The other thing you'll notice if you start digging into real Google Analytics results for your clients in the local business, you'll find that for the ones that actually built out a good search presence, they're getting lots and lots and lots of long tail traffic, stuff that is not showing, in generally speaking, not showing a full pack of local results or not showing any at all. And so, yes, it absolutely has a bearing on local. And everything you do in the kind of the search sphere with respect to the way we teach link liberation, at least, is also going to impact in a positive way their social profile, if you will. And Becky, who we just talked about, 75% of her clients are local. A lot of them are professionals like therapists and chiropractors and attorneys and builders. And she is doing 100% of what she is doing is what we would characterize as quote-unquote search, although, as I said, that's kind of converged with social. So maps is only a little tiny piece of what you should be doing for a local client.
Okay, I've just had one question come through in regards to the link liberation course. Is it purely all video, or is there any chance for one-on-one consultations or the ability to get specific questions?
Well, yes, there's a couple different levels there. And so the first thing, and actually you'll see this as an option if you go look at the offer, um, those that sign up in Link Liberation are given the opportunity to sign up with what we call an action team. Now, an action team is an innovation we created. Actually, it was Andrea Warner at our company who created this this innovation last year, and it was done as an experiment, and it had such rave reviews. It was the best thing that's ever happened, and Dan and I cannot take credit for it. Andrea is the one who came up with it. And so literally it's a 1-hour webinar each week. It's a small group. There are no more than 8 people in the group, and you go through the entire process and the entire training lockstep. So the group is run by one of our star students, somebody who's been through at least one generation of Link Liberation. In fact, a couple of them I think have been through 2 generations of Link Liberation. These are people at the top of their game, and they're actually just giving back to the community by running the action team. And so that, plus you'll have your peers in a kind of a peer group setting. And so that's an option, and that's fantastic. Once you become a Link Liberation 3 graduate, then if you want to continue with us, we have a coaching program available that you could qualify for. And that, again, we don't even really want to have questions from people who haven't been through Link Liberation, because almost everything we have to say is going to relate back to that material at this point. But those are how you would want to continue once you. I mean, and if you're so damn good at this that you can test out, we don't really have a way to, we don't have college placement exams, but you can talk to us one-on-one and see if that makes sense. But as a general rule, you want to go through at least the first 6 to 8 weeks of Link Liberation before a lot of the conversations you'll have with us are going to be anything more than that's in week 5.
Just a couple more questions. One, we had this quick question about WordPress. A lot of people obviously are generating massive networks of WordPress spammy sites, and the question was, does that mean we shouldn't build our websites on WordPress? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, there's no problem there. It's like you got to bear in mind that for all of the trash talking I do about Google, the fact of the matter is, they have the highest concentration of PhDs in any company in the history of mankind. They're not stupid. They're incredibly good. And so don't think that they're that easy to trick. WordPress accounts for more than 18% of the web. Okay, when you think about the number of sites that is, truly staggering. So if you wiped out all WordPress sites, what would you have? Right? Or even if you disadvantaged them in some way. Bear in mind, Matt Cutz's blog is built on WordPress, right? So no, it's not as simple as saying, oh, if it's built on WordPress, it leaves behind a footprint, blah 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 blah. Most of that annoying conversation about footprints is just completely off base. They're smarter than that. They have signals that you can use that are way more reliable and don't have nearly the harmful side effects and collateral damage that something like, oh, we're going to treat WordPress differently.
Great answer. Just a quick comment on the recent EMD update. Do you have some thoughts to share about that?
Yeah, yeah. And EMD I didn't put in here because there just weren't enough questions about it. But here's the thing: EMD was not a penalty; it was a removal of an unfair advantage. EMD, and in fact, Matt Cutts talked about this. Oh God, going on a year and a half or more ago.
Sorry, what does EMD stand for again? For those that don't know.
Sorry. Oh yeah, exact match domain. I'm sorry. Yeah, exact match domain. So that's the car, Belgian-car-rental.info, right? That'd be an EMD, and you can get kind of crazy with these exact match domains, and sure enough, you could certainly look at that and say, yeah, that's kind of a badge of spam, or at least a low-quality website. You can certainly make that argument, and it's been true a lot of the time. However, what was really going on with the exact match domains is because it looked like a navigational query, right? When I type in Home Depot into the search box, I expect to see HomeDepot.com. And it's something like 20+% of all Google queries are in the category of what's called navigational queries. So it means you're just looking for the website. And so the challenge with exact match domain is, how do I know it's not a navigational query? And so when you type in CNN, everybody knows you're looking for CNN.com. When you type in Home Space Depot, everybody knows that you're looking for HomeDepot.com. But what if you type in Belgian car rental? Are you looking for the site, or are you doing a keyword search? You see, it's an unsolvable problem, is the reality. And so that's the reason it's taken them so long to get around to doing something about it. And at this point, I think what they really are doing, and this is a little bit of conjecture, because finding good quality exact match domain sites can actually be kind of challenging, strangely enough. What they're really doing is they're using, kind of amping up some of the negative signals in those cases where the keyword search matches the domain name. But that's total conjecture at this point.
All right, I've just got one last question, and then we'll start wrapping up. A few people have asked, is this kind of stuff good for people starting from scratch? And if so, how long can people, how long does this stuff take before it starts kind of kicking in? And I think you covered it with one of your case studies, but it might be worth just talking a bit more about that.
Yeah. In fact, the very first process we actually teach, I'll back up to, so we can talk directly to the list. Let's see where I can. Here it is. And so the first thing we talk about is what's called the avatar strategy, which actually Howie Jacobson teaches, and we teach a variation of it, and then defining your persona, which is your voice in the marketplace. And then once you have that established and you figure out kind of how you want to begin talking within a market, then we go into week 2, we're building an audience. And this is really a magical thing that you can do. Is if you don't have a website yet, we recommend that you don't even build one until I believe it is week 4. And the reason is you can actually start your conversation in Twitter, create an audience, refine your voice, begin to understand more about what the company wants, and build up a following so that when you launch your website, you can launch it the same day with traffic, just by literally posting to Twitter. And so starting out, this is actually the perfect way to start out. You literally would get market research done in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the course by doing social engagement out there in the Twitter sphere before actually even committing to what you put up on your website. So that is truly the best way to start out.
Okay, that's great. I just also wanted to say, so we've been subscribers for SEO Brain Trust for, I think, ever since it was kind of released, and Leslie's really taken care of his customers. So we actually got the Lick Liberation stuff kind of thrown in as part of our Brain Trust membership, and we've been using the training in-house just for, internally for how we're managing engagement on Twitter, and it's really, really good. One of our sort of sister businesses is actually a web development company, and we've been testing that out with a bunch of clients that we also do SEO stuff for, and we're saying, hey, this is the new SEO, and we actually, give parts of the course to show these clients, to sort of say this is what it's all about, and they're sort of saying, well, this is amazing, this is what we need to do. How about we pay you to do it for us? So. So there's been a bunch of work, like seriously, there's already, 10 or so clients that have kind of picked up that are just wanting someone to actually pick this stuff up and have turned into good, because you don't do market leadership for like a week and then sort of stop. It's not like setting up a website. So this is turning into some really good ongoing consulting income, in the other business that we're kind of involved with. So I think there's some really big opportunities there.
Yeah, and that's the reason week 10 is devoted to it. I mean, that's one of the things we did in kind of repackaging the pro edition of the course, is we realized that there were so many people using this for consulting for clients that we amped up the amount of stuff in team building and in consulting in order to really address those felt needs in the marketplace.
Well, I think we should probably end it there. I just really wanted to thank Leslie for his time. I think he kind of set me straight about a few things in my blog post, and for that I'm really grateful. I'm the first guy to own up and say, hey, this guy knows more about this sort of stuff than me. I'm always out there to learn. Some stuff I've taken, a few pages of notes here. Some really, really good content. The questions, and there's some really good comments just about the content you've done. So really appreciate your time. We had to put this thing together really kind of quickly. It's meant a lot of kind of late nights and stuff to kind of organize this. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. So there's again some questions about the offer. We're going to follow up with a couple of emails with the recording, with the slides. We'll also in case you missed it, we'll also post a link in there, and we'll follow up a couple of times. I think the plan at the moment is to leave the offer open until I think Saturday at midnight PST. That's what we're kind of thinking about. And this actually this is an absolutely genuine offer. Leslie's doing this as a favour to me. We've been friends for a very long time, and this is not publicly available anywhere else. So as Leslie said, this is going to be made available at a $1,297 price point when they actually reopen and do their relaunch. So I really urge people to check it out if that's if you think this is going to be of value to you. If not, I think just even the content that's been shared today, just apply this stuff. And I think as Leslie shared, the best way to do SEO at the moment is not to do SEO, to do marketing. And certainly at Nola Samurai, that's kind of the approach we've taken. It was kind of funny a couple of weeks ago. We'd actually noticed that we didn't even have title tags switched on in our blog, which is kind of embarrassing.
That is interesting. Yeah, do title tags, by the way.
Yeah, title tags is pretty good. But we still get 60 to 100,000 visitors a month. So it hasn't really affected us because we do marketing. So. But yeah, it's a little personal confession.
Nice. All right then. Well, thanks a lot, Eugene. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in and chat with you and your group. Fantastic. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, Leslie.